Welcome to Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chelney alongside Nick Zararis. And Nick, there's only so many times I could say the Rangers are cooked. I feel like I've started the last 4 or 5 episodes saying that. And they have not only cooked more, they're ashes. They are so burnt to a crisp that you couldn't possibly cook them anymore, and yet they continue to be cooked. They continue to be there, and it is just when you think it couldn't get any worse, oh baby, it gets worse.
This is like an insult to fire departments to be this cooked. Like at a certain point, it's unfortunate that we still have to do another 50 some odd games of this, because for all intents and purposes, this shit's over, man. Yeah. They're not doing anything with 2 AHL defensemen, with 4 AHL forwards. Kreider will be back after Christmas break, sure, but this team isn't doing anything. Come on now. Vakanainen and Borgen have looked between atrocious and unplayable. And granted,
Borgen was awful. Miserably bad. And the funniest thing about this is that allegedly, apparently, he was Drury was looking at him for a long time. Brother, what are we watching?
He's tall and he's got good skate speed. You go and look at the NHL edge stats. He's a really good skater for a defenseman. He's 88th, 89th percentile in skate speed. He's 6'2", 210. He's a big guy. And the Rangers felt that it was probably a little bit more of a fit thing than anything as to why it wasn't working for him in Seattle this year. Seattle using him a lot. He was Seattle's 6th most commonly used player this year at 5-on-5. When in reality, he's more of a fringe guy. So I can understand, at least in theory, what they were doing. But, I was doing show prep waiting for you to get situated. And it hit me while I was looking at the box score that I had more beers on Saturday than the Rangers had shots on goal today. The Rangers finished with 14 shots on goal. I had 14 beers by 5 o'clock on Saturday. So we're talking about
12 shots, baby.
The Rangers came out, and look, I understand that Vincent Trocheck feels obligated to try and do things. He was the one who had to pull the media aside and say, no, we weren't shit talking our boss. I promise we weren't. I would never. Even though very clearly that didn't come out of thin air. I'm sure that wasn't the sole topic that came up in that conversation that closed.
I'm sure the weather was not on the itinerary.
You're not going to tell me that Steve Dangle just pulled that out of his ass, that he just made that up entirely. That's number one. Number two, Vincent Trocheck, you are supposed to be one of the best players on this team. You cannot be fighting a bum like Paul Cotter 5 minutes into the game. The Rangers love doing this performative stuff. That's not actually going to help them do anything. Adam Herman said, it's only going to take one more fight for them to turn this season around. Fighting on occasion to fire the guys up is fine. Fighting because it is the only thing you think you can do to fire your team up to play better is pointless. You are getting brain damage for the sake of getting brain damage. Trocheck is too good of a player, in theory, to be taking a 5-minute major to come off the ice that early in the game against a team that is better than you. When you are playing a team with more talent than you, you need all hands on deck. Everybody has no confidence and they feel miserable about this game. To go out there and just get into a fight for the sake of getting into a fight isn't accomplishing anything. What would have accomplished something? Dumping the puck in the offensive zone, going to get it, and forcing the Devils to play defense. What would have been helpful at some point?
Scoring a goal.
Hell, I would have
generating offensive chances. Actually getting into the offensive zone would be a nice start.
The Devils overhauled a lot of their team. They got 3 new defensemen. They got a new goalie and a half. They had Allen at the end of last year. But this is not like the 2002 Devils over there. They don't have Scott Stevens. They don't have Rob Niedermeyer. They don't have Ken Danico. They are not that good defensively. What they are good at is transition play, of going from defense to offense quickly, funneling pucks up the walls, and breaking out with speed and letting their best players do what they do. It would be nice if the Rangers had a guy who hated the Devils as much as Jack Hughes hates the Rangers. Jack Hughes genuinely gets up for these games and looks for the big moment to find him. The Rangers star players, they wilt whenever they're in these moments. There is no get on my back, follow me, we're going to do this. It's, whoa, no, this game is so fast. We can't do anything. The puck isn't. And that's the thing I think that was most concerning for me tonight. when you're in as bad of a rut as the team is in right now, you need to simplify and dumb down what you are doing to the most basic of steps. I need a first 5-foot outlet pass. I don't want long stretch passes. I don't want rims up the glass. I want that first pass, that receiving forward, to be at the half wall at the circles, so that first pass only needs to be 10 feet. The Devils are not a physical team. They are not going to cycle and forecheck you into a pulp. They want to play in transition. The Rangers did not care. And you could say that, well, the Devils are a good team. The Rangers are playing a bunch of AHL guys. That's okay if you lose. The Rangers didn't lose today. The Rangers got embarrassed today. There is a difference.
It's you can't say, oh, the Rangers are playing a bunch of AHL guys when the free fall is still happening. If the Rangers were like, up there in standings points and this kind of fall off wasn't happening and they had a stinker or they just, they didn't play well or whatever.
Those happen.
Those happen. But you cannot with a straight face look at me and say, it's okay because the Rangers were playing,
a good team.
And Johnny Brodzinski as the fourth line center. Like, that's not an argument, bro. You cannot in good faith look at gestures wildly at the last 2 months now for this team.
They've lost 13 of their last 17 games.
And then tell me, oh, it's okay because the Devils are good and the Rangers are Kreider's not playing. Kreider's not playing because he's been horrifically bad. And also, by the way, it's a step in the right direction that Kreider gets healthy scratched. When is Mika Zibanejad going to get scratched? And I sound like a broken record because I say this every single week. Every single week. When is Zibanejad going to sit down? He's awful. I mean, my God, dude, he does. Here's the thing. If you don't believe me, right? Just go and watch the game against the Devils. Forget about everything else. Forget about every other game prior to this one. Go back and just watch Zibanejad when he's on the ice. Just watch him. If you hate analytics, fine. If you hate what I'm saying, fine. Go and watch him for yourself. He's not moving. He's not trying to move. He's not fighting for any loose battles. And if he is, he's losing all of them. He's giving up on every single opportunity imaginable. He's passing where he doesn't need to pass. He's shooting into four bodies when he doesn't need to shoot. He is miserably bad. And this man is making $8.5 million until 2030, and he has a no-move clause, and also his contract is completely buyout-proof. Because it's full of bonuses. If you buy him out, they get no space for that. What are we doing here? Why is he still out there? Even Ryan Lindgren, who I've argued that he should be sitting as well, from what I've seen, because I had a really busy Monday today, kind of forgot they were playing it 1 out of 7. Ryan Lindgren didn't have the worst time out there that I've seen. He's had worse games. Why is Mika Zibanejad still playing? And on top of that, why is he playing? Why is he still getting power play time? The power play can't do anything. Why is he skating and also still getting these opportunities to create chances when he's not doing that? He's not doing anything. If we called him a power play merchant before, when he was actually, trying to do things on the ice, right? If we were calling him a power play merchant before, he's not even doing that, dude. He's a 5-on-5-0, but he wasn't that great 5-on-5 before. He's a 5-on-5-0 now, and he is a power play 0. Why is he out there?
The power play is 7% over the last month. The power play is awful. Broken. It's fundamentally.
The penalty kill was really good up until today, but if there's one shining light to all of this happening in Rangers land, it is that the penalty kill, except for today against New Jersey, has been pretty good. That's it. That's all I got.
So one of the funnier old head insults I saw earlier today on Twitter, and I forget what reporter had tweeted something about Zibanejad's game, but some very clearly old head said if you taped a bunch of eggs to Zibanejad's undershirt, he would finish the game with all of them perfectly intact because he never makes contact with anyone or anything. And you can see one of the tells of a player that is just broken is when you can watch them process the game in real time. There's an element of inherentness to hockey that isn't in the other sports, where that decision making just needs to be faster because it's not as structured and it's a lot more based on what's in front of you. If I, watching the game on TV, which is even more delayed than watching it in person, can say he's going 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, he's taking too much time. And this is something else that speaks to, because I fundamentally feel like people are missing the bigger point here. Like, yes, the efforts have been bad, but this is not an effort issue. The team is untalented. It is not fast. It is not decisive. It is not creative. Even Panarin does not look creative. Lafreniere looks miserable.
Lafreniere's been bad lately.
Trocheck looks miserable. Kreider has been miserable. The only guys with a pulse on this team for the last month or so have been Will Cooley and Sam Carrick, and that's not acceptable. And you can say, well,
and Igor. I mean,
well, yeah, not counting the goals.
Yeah, Igor yesterday against Carolina was spectacular.
Did all he could, man.
My guy, you can't have, as much as Igor tries, he can't also score the goals.
No,
like I know there's a few shots that off the post, and well, whatever, all these things, but Shesterkin made, I want to say, like 5 or 6 surefire goals if anybody else was on the ice. He stopped them. I mean, he was on his game, and the Rangers mustered 1 goal off of a giveaway in the first 17 seconds of the game. Jimmy Vesey scored, and then that was it. They got nothing. And Joe Micheletti on the broadcast today, really gave it to the team.
Like 4 separate times in the last 4 games, Sam's been like, "What are the keys to the game?" And Joe's like, "Trying." Yeah. Effort. Yeah. And look, we don't know
that's when you know.
Look, we don't know if Joe's leaving with Sam after this year, but it wouldn't surprise me based on how honest he's been, because Joe and Sam are always, they're trying to keep us watching the game. If they're making fun of the team, we are not incentivized to keep watching the game. They have a job to do just like everybody else. God bless them. They are at their wits' end. If you have lost Sam and Joe, you're not getting it back. And one other thing about this, this team can't do the basics. They cannot skate in a straight line. They cannot complete more than 3 passes in a row. They played, I don't want to say awfully against Dallas, because they played reasonably well enough that they were able to win the game.
Penalty kill was really good.
The penalty kill was outstanding, but I think there's no better encapsulation of the missing the forest for the trees bit than the results of the game against the Stars, because Shesterkin has the best goaltending game of the entire season so far. 5-something goals saved above expected. And instead of talking about, wow, we just had one of the great goalie performances of the year, this is a goalie in spite of all the environmental stuff in front of him, what are we talking about? We're talking about Rempe getting suspended for 8 games because he's a schmuck. At a certain point, you are what you are. And when you get ejected in 1/8 of your career games, you don't deserve to stay in the lineup. And they can say, well, he drew the 3 penalties. He was having a great game.
He was having a good game, but Matt Rempe just showed you who he is. I don't know. Again, and we were rooting for him early on.
We want him to play.
Yeah.
If he's only getting 4 minutes a game, he's not a player. The Rangers last year kept pounding the drum. He's not a sideshow. He's not a sideshow. He's not a sideshow. Why does he play 4 minutes a game? He has 2 NHL games where he's played more than 8 minutes, and he's got 22 career NHL games. They are not treating him like a serious hockey player. He himself is leaning into that. If you are getting ejected because you did something so dirty that even the incompetent NHL officials can agree that you should be thrown from the game, and you're trying to egg on the crowd like this is WWE, like you're proud of what you just did, you are not a serious person. The Rangers are trying to win games so people don't get fired and people don't get traded. You are up 2-1 against a good team. The Stars are a bona fide good team. They're one of the 10 best teams in the league. They're a Stanley Cup contender. It took a superhuman effort from the goalie. And we're talking about a 22-year-old who doesn't have a clue. He doesn't have an ounce of common sense. And at a certain point, He is what he is, and people will say, oh, well, he's tall. The referees target him. He doesn't get called fairly. You know how hard it is to get the officials to agree on anything. You know how hard it is to get player safety to agree on anything. And people will be like, oh, player safety doesn't like the Rangers because of the Tom Wilson thing. Yeah, you own that. You have to own that.
Yeah.
That's
you made a letter about that.
You made a letter that may or may not have come directly from James Dolan and may or may not have led to partly Jeff Gorton and John Davidson getting fired, but you own that now. That is on your ledger. You don't get to play persecution when you have actively emboldened the bad behavior. He needs to, if he wants to play, he cannot be taking these suspendable hits. We're not even talking about, he took a bad interference, he was in the offensive zone trying to drive a cycle. That's a wholly unnecessary hit to a vulnerable player. He's got 30 pounds and 4 inches on. It is purely for his own gratification of, I'm doing something, I'm helping the team. And the Rangers are caught up in this bullshit as opposed to trying to win games. Same thing today. The Rangers aren't tough guys. The Rangers aren't the type of team that's going to muck it up after whistles and cross-check and talk
Very
shit.
Performative today.
It was nonsense. It was utter we're going to bully the Devils because they're smaller than us. This is one of like the 5 teams in the entire league we're tougher than. So we're going to act tougher than them. Didn't stop Jack Hughes, didn't stop Bratt, didn't stop Heischer, didn't stop a thing today. If all you got are these performative fake fights and frustration trades, this season is over. There are still 50-something games remaining this year. We got an all-star break in the middle of February. We got a trade deadline the first week of March. We got a long way to go. And if we're playing this bad of a lineup, the lineup today was atrocious. If we are playing this bad of a lineup, it's going to be a long 55, 60 games.
I mean, the thing about this, though, is that where does it get better?
That's a great question.
Where and how does it get better? Because, okay, let's just say Kreider comes back. What the next game is? What, Saturday? I think it is.
Yeah, Saturday.
With the holiday freeze and all that. Okay, Kreider comes back, and I don't know, Brzezinski comes out, or by maybe some miracles, Zibanejad gets scratched, and Brzezinski stays as like the center or whatever. I don't think that happens. But I'm not the head coach of a hockey team, so what do I know? Clearly. But okay, Kreider comes back. Now what? Like the team is still awful. They don't want to play. They don't want to skate. They don't want to back check. They don't want to create offense. They don't want to get in the dirty areas. Where is the solution for this roster? Because again, we've been talking about this throughout the entire year and the offseason as well. This is essentially the exact same team that made it to 2 wins from the Stanley Cup. You have players that are making a lot of money right now that, are like, just sign me. I'll do the exact same thing, but for a lot cheaper. I'm not going to say I'm going to do better than anybody, but what I am saying is I probably couldn't do worse. And I wouldn't cost you 8.5 or 5.5 or whatever, 7, 8 million. Like I wouldn't cost that. Give me the league mid. I'll do the exact same thing. I will, but I'll try. You'll see me give effort there. To what results? Maybe let's don't watch me do it, but I'll try my best. Like this roster is not going to change.
No.
The biggest pieces on this team are not going anywhere. Kreider's probably not going anywhere. Maybe he will. I don't know. Trocheck's not going anywhere. Probably. Zibanejad. I mean, by all accounts, there's a report that he was asked to waive his move clause, and he said no. So good luck. You're stuck with him, and you can. I guess you can improve along the margins, maybe, but. I just want to point out really quickly, the Buffalo Sabres, who have lost every game for essentially the entire month, and the entire season pretty much, and the Chicago Blackhawks both have 26 points right now. They are tied for the worst team in the NHL. 26. Very important number. And I say that because the Rangers have 33. They are 7 points above the worst teams in the NHL. So you tell me, where do we go from here? Because it's not going to get better. It's only going to continue to get worse. Like every single day, We watch this team, and we go, surely it can't get worse. Surely it's going to get better. And every time we think they've hit rock bottom, they keep digging. Like, the game against Carolina was bad, but there was at least some, okay, well, the effort was a little bit better, especially like that first period was pretty okay. Like, the penalty kill was pretty all right. It's like, okay, maybe there's something to glean off of. Second period was all Carolinas. The third period was pretty much all Carolina. Rangers really didn't generate much of anything, but there was at least something that you could kind of grasp and say to yourself, okay, there's something there that we can build off of because they have a game the next day. And then they get to the game against the Devils, a rival. The Devils are going to show up for this game, and they were the only team to show up for this game. The Rangers went into New Jersey, the rival territory, and laid an egg. Again, 12 shots on goal against your rival. This is how you play against the team that you should be hating on. And instead of actually scoring and generating offensive opportunities, you fight people in the first period. Trocheck takes himself out of the play. And on top of that, too, the funniest part about this was that, okay, Trocheck, you want to fight Paul Cotter? Fine, you go ahead. But then also, there wasn't any stoppages. So my mans couldn't even get on the ice. He was stuck in a penalty box for, I think it was like another 6 or 7 minutes. More than he was supposed to, because there wasn't a stoppage in play. So my man took himself out of the first period for like 12 minutes, dude.
And this is supposed to be one of the good players on this team.
And I understand that, like, obviously he didn't expect there to be no stoppages. Like, I'm well aware of that. But my guy, you fought Paul Cotter for reasons. You got to be out there on the ice because you're allegedly one of the best offensively gifted players on the team. We need you, bro. Like, you can't be taking a vacation. Like, we need you on the floor. It's like those memes where the manager will be texting, their employees and say, "Oh, we're short staffed. Yeah, we need you tonight, bro. Like, we're short staffed." And the employee goes, "Oh, that sucks. Sorry to hear. Good luck though, bro. Like, I'm not available." Like, that's what happened, dude. You can't. You have to be on the ice. The Rangers are getting zero offensively from anything. You got to be out there. You can't be fighting Paul Cotter. I understand the implication and the thought process of, I'm one of the better players on this team. I have to fight. I have to do something. But that's all performative and that all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, you had 12 shots on goal as a team.
Yeah, no.
What are we doing here?
If you can legitimately play a drinking game without getting alcohol poisoning about shots on goal, it might be time to reassess what we're doing here. And look, I have been very reticent to pile on Laviolette because I don't think this is mostly his fault. But these lineup decisions at this point are just laughable. I mean, when we're pulling the goalie and we're sending Zibanejad out there in the 6-on-5, we're sending Kreider out there in the 6-on-5. I mean, at a certain point, if we're sending the fourth line out there with 2 minutes to go down a goal, I feel like you're telling me you're worried about conceding the goal as opposed to trying to win the game. Something one of my friends tweeted at me. So the lineup today, Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere, Smith, Zibanejad, Berard, Cooley, Edstrom, Carrick, Vesey, Lindgren, Fox, Jones, Schneider, Vakanainen, Borgen. If you go and you were to pull up hockeyviz.com, if you went by Micah's model, the only first line caliber players in the entire lineup today, based on their season so far, are Panarin and Fox. Trocheck is a second liner. Lafreniere profiles as a third liner. Zibanejad profiles as a fourth liner. Riley Smith and Berard are third liners. Cooley is a third liner. Hedl is a second liner. Brodzinski is a fourth liner. The entire fourth line is fourth liners, other than Vesey. Vesey is a second liner. Ryan Lindgren has AHL impacts. Adam Fox has first pair impacts. And then the bottom two pairs all have third pair impacts. The Rangers did not ice a competitive roster today. And I don't know if James Dolan knew there was a game at 1 o'clock today. I would imagine there's a chance he was aware, especially because they were in the tri-state, and I'm sure he probably had to pay for some travel stuff to get the team back so everyone could leave for the next few days to go out see family and stuff. But if you were James Dolan and you knew this game happened, and even if you didn't watch and you just saw the score, how can you tell me that Chris Drury is doing a good job here? How in God's name can you say the general manager and president, because he's both, is doing a good job here? All he has done is raise the temperature of this situation over the last month. It starts with that memo. I don't know why you would contemporaneously write a memo and send it to everyone else. And like, I hate to do this because, like, this isn't a criminal conspiracy show, but like, never write anything in an email or a text message. It is not what. Never say anything on the phone. Don't write emails. Don't write text messages.
This is when Nick watches a lot of like Sopranos on The Wire. Like this is like we're right in your avenue right now. Nick.
If you want plausible deniability, you cannot document these things. If you want to have phone calls and you want to do the one party consent, you can't record me, whatever. But at a certain point, it's the general manager's fault. Everyone is miserable. There has to be a decent contingent of the guys on the team who feel like the general manager is just waiting to get rid of them. The coach has to be feeling the heat at this point. The only people who probably don't feel anything right now are Lafreniere, because he's just oblivious and he doesn't really realize the gravity of the situation, and the guys who got the bulletproof contracts. If you're Mika Zibanejad, sure, you probably don't feel great about your game right now, but they can't get rid of you. Your money is guaranteed for the next 6 years. And no matter what, they're going to keep sending you out there, brother, because today would have been the day. I know Kreider's been dealing with the nagging back injury that he came back from a little earlier than expected. Give him an extra day, let him start the rest of the Christmas break early. But at a certain point, man, I don't want to hear it about, well, they did so great the last 2 years, the last 3 years. I don't care. The general manager said, we think we're close. He tripled down on that group from 2021. He made Trouba the captain. He brought in Trocheck because we're close. We are 2 years later. And what exactly do the Rangers have to show? We have a regular season champions banner, and we have 2 home game gates from Eastern Conference Finals that James Dolan was able to probably get between $2.5 and $3 million for each of those games. That's what the Rangers have to show. And look, if you want to tell me, well, Nick, it's so hard to win the Stanley Cup. If they make the conference finals, that's a good season. Sure. My problem is that for 2.5, 3 years, it's been, they just got to try harder. They're right there. When they haven't been. It has always been disingenuous for the Rangers to portray it as us being right there. When you go and look at the underlying numbers from the conference finals, the other teams had possession 60 to 65% of the time in all of those games. And yes, Igor is tremendous. He is the best goalie in the league, in my opinion, even with how this season is unfolding. All of that said, what is your plan to fix this, Chris Drury? Are we going to EJ Emery next year? Is Drew Fortescue getting a look? Is that supposed to be the defense of a team that wins the Stanley Cup? A rookie, Adam Fox, a Ryan Lindgren replacement, Will Borgen, Ukko Vakanainen, Keandre Miller? Does that scream Stanley Cup to you? Does what Mika Zibanejad and what Vincent Trocheck are doing right now scream Stanley Cup to you? Does that even say playoffs to you? Like, at a certain point, it's not effort. The talent is not here. It's not.
No, it's no. This for the window is closed.
Yes.
And I feel confident in saying that. You can, in good faith, watch what the Rangers have been doing the last 20
Just look at the talent, not even like the result. Just look at the talent. Sure.
Yeah, but the talent is one thing, but just watch them play. Again, you can read there have been teams that haven't had top end talent that have played a lot better than this group has played. Just watch them play. Again, if you hate analytics, if you hate everything, if you only value the eye test and nothing else matters and all these things, go just watch them play. Because they're not even playing the game half the time. Like, genuinely. And it hurts me to say that. Like,
the game looks too fast for them. Like, it looks
really
like they are playing a level up. Like, if you were sending a 14-year-old to play against the varsity team, that's what they look like right now. Even Adam Fox looks very slow and underprepared.
They look like they don't know where the puck is going to be. They look like they don't know where each other are going to be. They look like they don't know what the other team is going to counter them with. They look like, they look like when a defenseman starts pinching in, a forward isn't coming back to support. That leads to a 2-on-1. They look like they've never played professional hockey before, and that's it's such a crazy thing for me to say when this is again like this is the same group that literally just went to the conference finals. This is essentially the same team, and they look like they've never played in the NHL or in the AHL or any
together
or any organized hockey in their entire life. I can't fathom how that is possible. They just went to the conference finals, and they also had a good start to the year. How did they go from that to this essentially in the blink of an eye? How does that happen? I don't understand.
Do you think they're playing too much kumbaya hockey, Andrew? Is that the problem?
Well, you have to play hockey for you to play kumbaya hockey, and right now they're not even doing that. So that's tough for me to answer.
So the answer to that question is, number one, we have operated under the assumption that the group post 2020 to the present has always been a weak group. It hasn't responded particularly well to adversity. It's had a number of both culture moments that tell you there isn't really great leadership here. There have been the players they've prioritized to try and facsimile leadership. And somebody said this the other day. I think it was when I was out on Saturday. I think my friend Chris said it. He goes, doesn't that make the rest of the group look really bad that they wanted Trouba to be the captain? And I was like, yeah, it does. It does. That they found the one guy who kind of wanted to be the leader of the team, and he was like the 10th best player on the team. That doesn't speak well for the type of guys they have on the team. And when it looks so rudderless the way it does right now, where Laviolette's just throwing the lines in the blender, doing anything to try and show some signs of a pulse. So I can understand it from his perspective there. My problem as far as the coaching and the decision-making right now is we're not running a meritocracy here. At a certain point, we got to stop worrying about sunk costs and, people's feelings, because there are an awful lot of games left to be sending Zibanejad out there for 13, 14 minutes a game. I forget what he had today. It was close to the top. He was 15, 17, seventh most used forward in all situations. So definitely less than he's been getting, but still, man, you can't keep sending him out there for the power play. And look, I don't know if they're in a position where they can, because I know it's a player rights issue, but there's got to be a serious conversation about sending him home for a week, because nothing is him playing is accomplishing nothing. He's got to want to do that, the way JT Miller did with the Canucks, where he needed to step away to handle whatever he was dealing with. And that's okay, man. I would rather you do that than play at 20% of what you're supposed to be, because you're not helping anyone. And you can say, well, you don't get to speak for him. It's his career. It's his life. Brother, we're all stuck watching this right now. Yeah. This is miserable. There are so much better things I could have been doing today from 1 to 3:30 than watching the Rangers get dummied by the Devils. And the Devils are well situated. Yeah, they got some things to figure out, some of the more long-term planning, especially in net. But they've got 4 bona fide franchise players in Bratt, Hughes, Heischer, and Timo Meier. They also have 5 really good defensemen, and they have Nemitz in the AHL, who is really promising. That is the standard, man. You missed your shot. We keep talking about how no one is that good this year in the NHL, and I do think that's still the case. The only team you couldn't run into in the playoffs last year was Florida. Going into the playoffs, we all were in agreement. The only team that is definitely better than them is Florida. Of course, ultimately, they did end up having to play Florida, and they couldn't get there. This year, Florida's still good. They're not as good as they were last year. The Devils are better than they were. Carolina looks better than they were. You missed your shot. The last 2 years were your shots. We can lament, should it have been Timo Meier 2 years ago? Should it have been Jake Gensel this past year? There are a million of the woulda, coulda, shouldas as to how the last 2.5, 3 seasons could have gone. But right now, we are talking battlefield medicine here. It is, if they're going to die, that's it. We're on to the next person. Lopping Trouba off, trying to get rid of the bad vibes. Okay, fine. Vakanainen's not a serious guy. Vakanainen is not, if he was not good enough to play on the Ducks, he's absolutely not good enough to be playing on the Rangers full time. And Borgen, he was playing way too many minutes in Seattle. I am not entirely ready to say he's a nothing burger.
Brutal today.
But he's 28 years old and has 230 career NHL games. He was not a full-time NHL regular until he was 26 years old. That tells you about his ceiling, his floor, and what you can realistically expect from him. Sure, Miller might be back by after Christmas break, and maybe that brings the temperature down a smidge. That is one person who plays 18 to 22 minutes per game. They still have to be better in the other 38 minutes of these games. They can't string together one good period, let alone one good game right now. It's miraculous they won against Dallas on Friday, the way they played, the penalties they took. Give Shesterkin all the flowers you can. But other than him and Cooley, and I'll say Sam Carrick, nobody should feel good about themselves, right? Edstrom, sure, why not? But nobody is doing anything remarkable here. And there is no help.
Help is not on the way. That Rise Against song Help is on the way yet. It's not coming. It's not happening. There's nobody here to save the day. And I tweeted this out, during the game, like hilariously, Chris Drury not trading the 2025 first round pick was a galaxy brain decision out of him. Because I said, it's like he took a test on a subject he never studied for, and he somehow managed to get some of the answers right. Wrong formula, right answer, etc. Like, I don't know how it happened that it's somehow, some way, the Rangers still have their first round pick this year. Because, oh boy, are they going to need it? Oh my God, are they going to need it? Like this, there's no savior that's coming for this team. Like it has to come from inside, and it's not happening.
Please don't tell me it's Brennan Othman. Please don't tell me it's Matt Rempe.
Please don't tell me it's Mark Messier. Please don't tell me it's Sean Avery. It's not Sarah Palin. Please get a grip. I beg of you.
Look, all I'm going to say as far as the extracurriculars in that department, you'll know to be worried if Mark Messier is on New York sports radio, because he's only around in the New York media when he thinks he can get a job. He's not calling into ESPN or WFAN when the Rangers are playing well. He's only on New York media because he's in Atlanta to do TNT every now and then. He's on location, not TNT, in New York for ESPN, excuse me. And then he's been doing the Monday night Amazon Prime broadcast for the Canadian markets. And he's not in New York when the Rangers are playing well. I heard he was at the game today. I was never actually able to get verification or not if he was actually at the game, but he's only here if he thinks he can get something out of it. Mark Messier is not hanging around out of the kindness of his heart. Ditto for Sean Avery, who the last I heard was yelling at homeless people on TikTok. Sarah Palin, I unfortunately, last year when I was walking into one of the playoff games against Carolina, one of my friends, he tapped me on the shoulder and he goes, "Is that Ron Duguay?" And I wasn't looking at Ron Duguay. I was like, "Is that Sarah Palin?" And they were holding hands, walking into MSG to go into one of the playoff games.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, I'm going to go out on a limb and say if you're watching this show, you can understand why we're giggling at the idea of Sarah Palin, who hasn't been relevant in like 14 years, parachuting into this to make this about the culture war. Because like Matt Rempe plays 5 minutes a game and she likes violence because she has issues that have yet to be resolved from her early life. But at a certain point, man, you are what you are. And right now the Rangers are a clown show. Your record is word to Bill Parcells, your record is what you are. And this team stinks. This team is an abomination.
Yeah.
They couldn't string together like 4 or 5 passes in a row. I'm not even saying score a goal. Could you get a pass from behind your net out of your zone in 2 passes or less? Could you gain the offensive zone in 5 strides or less? Can you get the puck behind Jacob Markstrom and make Pesce or make Dylan or Luke Hughes or whoever turn their back to you and go and get it? You couldn't. You could not execute the basic functions of a hockey team today against a division rival in the midst of an atrocious losing streak. You could not even put together a modicum of a respectable effort. I genuinely felt embarrassed watching them try and be tough. I am bigger than Jack Hughes. I am not a professional athlete. I don't feel strong because you're beating up guys smaller than you. You know, if we beat them and we got to do, we beat the Devils, we suck, but at least we beat the Devils. That's one thing. You no-showed against the Devils. You know, you had a lot of Ranger fans in that building who go to games there because it's $50 to $100 cheaper sometimes than when the Rangers play the Devils. And you robbed them of $120. You know, $120 is a lot of money, man.
That's right. Listen, the last thing I'll say to this is you had an opportunity to show up against if not your biggest rival. You can argue the Islanders are a bigger rival. If you want to, you know, measure, I'm not doing the measuring contest right now. The Devils are one of, if not the biggest rival the Rangers have. And you show up to this game and you put 12 shots on goal, 0 goals, and you got embarrassed the entire 60 minutes. You didn't generate a whole lot of anything. You continue to to trot out your quote unquote best players on the ice when they continue to not generate anything remotely close to, good offensive chances. You pretend to be tough against, like you said, one of the only teams in the league that the Rangers can try to flex on. And it does. Okay. So you beat up Paul Cotter. Great. You just got destroyed.
You lost the game.
Yeah. I don't like, okay, you beat up Paul Cotter. Okay.
Great.
What does that do
What's
for
that
me?
do for me? Yeah, exactly.
Like,
exactly.
I don't care. And we talked about this again. And, I'll end with this. A fight every now and again to get the team going is one thing, but pretending to be something you're not pretending to be this big bad wolf when you put 12 whole shots on net and Jacob Markstrom didn't even need to shower after the game because he didn't have to move for 2.5 hours. Get out of my face. It's over.
You play to win the game. You don't play to fight. You don't play for pride. You play to win the game. And at a certain point, if you're not playing to win the game, you're wasting everyone's time. And the Rangers did not play to win the game today.
No.
They played to try and feel better about themselves, and you got dummied. One thing we should talk about, because we haven't talked about it since the article came out last week, but it's really obvious that the front office and the organization as a whole is kind of a mess, because you read the article about the turnover in various non-public facing positions, social, scouting, different operations aspects. You read about the way certain people who were in the organization with Gorton and JD felt a lack of loyalty, that Chris Drury would just happily take their jobs, both of them, after being under their wings. Chris Drury worked with those guys. He worked with Gorton for 7 years. He turned down multiple jobs, Buffalo and Florida, to stay with the Rangers. And everybody, I would understand if a guy I worked with took the job that way and being a little damn, that was kind of messed up. You had no loyalty to those guys at all that spent that time mentoring you and trying to put you in a position to be successful where you could get job offers from other teams without ever showing a whole hell of a lot. Because let's not pretend the Wolfpack ever did anything while Chris Drury was their general manager. You have that. You have the social media thing where people get a little too carried away with it. No one knows entirely what happened. Don't speculate because it's not fair to the people involved in that situation. But you get a clear picture that the Rangers want to do things Chris Drury's way, because this is Chris Drury's show. Remember, we had Molly on the show right after the trade deadline, and she said, Chris Drury has his guys, and that's it. He has the 2 guys in the talent development. He's got 2 scouts, and it's Chris Drury's opinion. I don't want to hear about, the players aren't trying that hard. Chris Drury picked them. And don't tell me it's not his roster. Don't tell me, he needs more time. He has had 4 full off seasons. He has not, his most consequential transaction was signing Vincent Trocheck to replace Ryan Strome. Do not tell me he hasn't had the time. Do not tell me it is not his roster. He has remade this entire organization in his image. Can anyone tell me why the Rangers are so upset that they fired Jim Ramsey 2 years ago? Because anybody get to the bottom of that, anybody get to the bottom of Elias Anderson, Nils Lundqvist, any of the Vitaly Kravtsov, can anybody tell me with any definitive answer why all of these people were instantly I don't like this guy, or this guy has bad vibes? The meme, does anyone ever ask why if the baby has bad vibes or not? The general manager has bad vibes. He's on the record for at least 3 different like blow-ups on people, on Kravtsov. You're a bad teammate. You're letting your teammates down. After they lost to the Devils in game 5, I think it was, and him blowing up on Gallant and preventing the press conference from getting going after the game. Like, he is very clearly an argumentative, abrasive person, and it off-puts certain people. And like, if you're Vincent Trocheck, you probably respond to that because you identify with that type of stuff. But for these young guys, it doesn't work. And there's no more excuses. I'm done with excuses. This is Chris Drury's organization. It's not just his roster. It is his organization top to bottom. When he starts being held accountable for this, then we can have a conversation. Because
Drury should be fired. And
he should.
I don't know who the replacement should be. I don't know which assistant general manager is like, I don't know who's forward thinking or who's potentially could be available. Like, I don't know. So, it's tough for me to say, oh, he should be fired when I don't have a replacement in mind. But the Rangers, they're like, this is over. Like the Will Borgen, such like the Capo Caco trade should be Drury's last transaction as general manager of the New York Rangers. It has to be done. It's over. The season is over, and the longer you drag this on, the deeper you dig. Like this is how it's going to happen. And are you really going to give Drury the deadline to sell? Are you really going to give Laviolette another 50 games? If you fire Laviolette, you have to fire Drury. You can't fire Laviolette unless you fire Drury. Okay, well, if you fire Drury, then the general manager and the new general manager will come in and he'll decide if he wants to keep Laviolette or not. But you have to. Drury is done. He has to be done, and there's no other way around it.
And like, it would be one thing if like everyone was at least like happy and the vibes weren't bad and they were losing. But everyone is miserable. Everyone is miserable.
Yeah, it's over. It's over.
I don't see how you get this back on the tracks without trying to rebuild some trust. And we know Chris Drury's not in the trust building business because he sends people back to Russia if he doesn't like them. Vitaly Kravtsov, say what you will about him and his attitude, but like, if I was 20 years old, barely spoke English, and some dude who I vaguely knew who he was had the audacity to scream at me in front of a bunch of people that are my teammates, that wasn't his practice, by the way, I would have said, go fuck yourself. Like, I was picked 9th overall to help this team win something. Chris Drury never helped the Rangers win a thing as a player. I do not understand the loyalty that James Dolan has to him. I fundamentally don't. Like Glenn Sather, at least, he won things in Edmonton back in the 80s. Like, he has accomplishments he could point to as being reason for his, the trust there. Chris Drury has nothing on his resume as an executive to be like, oh, he might be able to figure his way out of this. He is still dealing with issues from his first offseason. 4 years later, 4 off seasons later, not 4 years later. The original sin of the Drury regime was trading the first line right wing for a third line to fourth line wing and a draft pick. They have still yet to replace that right wing. They have burned 4 second-round picks on replacements and getting rid of bad contracts. They don't have a lot to show. If you're in on Perreault, if you're in on, Emery, that next wave of guys, that's great and all. Those guys are all like 2 and 3 years away from being NHL players. They're probably 3-4 years away from being impactful NHL players. And that's if everything works out. What are we giving Chris Drury more time for? You said it before. How is trading Kakko for Borgen something that we can legitimately look at as like he's trying to improve the team? Borgen is not a better player than Kakko by any measure.
No.
It is entire.
Nice goal, by the way, that he scored. Would have been nice to have him here.
Would be nice to have a goal,
Yeah.
Like it's really disheartening. It's really frustrating because it's very similar to where the Giants are at, where there's just no like light at the end of the tunnel. Like, if you start over, that means you're letting Jim Dolan pick who the new GM is, the new president of hockey operations is. If you read the Vince Mercogliano article, there was a paragraph in there about how Glenn Sather typically was the buffer between Jeff Gorton and the ownership. And now Drury and Dolan talk directly to each other. You do not want James Dolan influencing your hockey decisions. I promise you don't. He does not watch more Ranger games than anyone listening to this show right now. I promise you. He is not tuned in He is not watching these games. And if he is, he's turning the TV off after the first period because ultimately he doesn't really care. This is one of many things in his life he has as a hobby because he was born to very rich parents. But I'm at a loss, man. There is no solution. That's the thing. Everybody keeps asking me, Nick, what should the Rangers do? How do they fix this? There isn't a fix here.
Your biggest problem can't go away. So what are you
without his permission, it can't go away.
Yeah, he doesn't want to go. So hands are tied unless you send, unless he wants to, go home for a little bit, reset essentially, and then see how it goes in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Maybe he becomes a hockey player again in that period of time. Maybe give him time to, just remember that he's a professional hockey player and that he, Zibanejad plays the game, or should play relatively well, and that, he can get back up to that level. Up until that point, that's your biggest issue. That's your 1C. He's making $8.5 million until 2030. No move clause, buyout proof contract. That's your number one, and you can't do anything about that. So
you can't get rid of him. You can't get rid of Trocheck. You probably won't get rid of Panarin because he's the only guy who's kind of playing reasonably well, and Cooley, but Cooley's cheap, so you wouldn't worry about that. Lindgren is a goner. I don't think there's a world where they could conceivably bring him back. I wouldn't be surprised if they traded him at the deadline to try and get anything of value in return. But they don't have a lot of assets to liquidate either. That's the other part of this. That's kind of an issue. You say, well, blow it up, start over. Well, typically that's commiserate with getting a bunch of assets so you can throw darts at the wall and hope that 3 of your 11 draft picks turn into functional players. They can't really get a lot for the guys they actually can move. What are you getting for K'Andre Miller right now? Like a 3rd and a 5, a 2nd and a 5? Would you really just want a 2nd and a 5 for him? What are you getting for any, there's no easy path out of this. And that's what's so scary about this.
He made his bed.
He's got to lie in it.
And he's got to lie in it. That's Chris Drury's job right now. Oh, there's always a solution. I can't.
You're a professional general manager.
We're trying to figure out who's the person responsible for this. Brother, it's your problem. You got to fix it.
And again, do we know he knows there's a problem? I don't think I fundamentally think the Rangers' issue is that they think their problems are effort and character and motivation based. I don't think they recognize that they just don't have that good of a roster. I think that's really the issue here. Otherwise, if they're just stupid, that's one thing. But being delusional is arguably worse than being stupid in sports. Because we say it all the time. The first way to address a problem is acknowledging there's one. And Drury identified the problem as Jacob Trouba bad, replace him, vibes better. And we did that, and the vibe has continued to deteriorate. Well, Kakko's being an ingrate. He doesn't want to be here. He thinks he's better than us. Well, guess what? He kind of is.
Kind of is.
He kind of is. I don't think Kakko's anything special. He's a better NHL player than anybody you had in your bottom 6 today. Not a shadow of a doubt. In me saying he's better than anyone you had in the bottom 6 today. I don't really got anything else. If you want to get out of here, if there's anyone else you want to make fun of.
That's it for me. I got to get back to. I was in Manhattan today, sprinted home to do the show, and now I got to sprint back to MSG for the Knicks and Raptors game. But yeah, this is over. There's no silver lining. There's no savior. There's no person that is going to single-handedly fix this team. It is rotten to the core, and it will continue to get worse. These games, you'll continue to see these 5-0 losses, these 12-shot. Games from the offense, and you'll have performative fights and players in the locker room afterwards saying we got to be better. It's you're spinning your wheels and you're not getting anywhere. There's no
Merry Christmas, guys.
Yeah, I hate to be so positive on the show, but there's if I had a solution, I'd give it to you. I don't have one. Drury doesn't have the
solution. I have the solution. We have the ghosts of present, past, and future visit Chris Drury in the night and scare him into doing something good for this hockey team. The ghost of Christmas past being Glenn Sather, the ghost of Christmas present being Bill Zito, and the ghost of Christmas future being, I don't know. Connor Bedard, I don't know, something along those lines. Because barring like some come to Jesus moment, I don't think he realizes that his roster is the problem, you know? And I think that's what's the most damning about all of this is that they really just think it's a vibes problem as opposed to the team stinks.
It's over. It's
All right, let's get out of here. We'll talk to you guys next week, barring anything weird happening between now and next week. Subscribe if you're listening on a podcast platform. If you're on Apple or Spotify, 5-star review, please. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Later.